My guest is my good friend Norman Meares. Norman, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, Jim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's set the scene. Let's go back to 1944, and you're a young man in Lumberton, North Carolina. Most of us know where that is.
Right.
The war is in full swing.
Yes, sir.
And you're thinking about joining the service.
Right.
But you're not old enough, are you?
No, sir. I was 16 at that time, and I had, when I was younger, I messed around with model planes, and I got interested in flying. My dad took me to the airport, and I got to fly an old PT-17. That was a bi-wing type aircraft. And the guy who had me in the cockpit said, "You sit in the front seat, I'll sit in the back, and you put your feet on the pedals and on the stick, and then see what I do, and see if you like it."
All right.
50 cents it cost my dad, which was a lot of money. But anyway, I did that, liked it, and I came back. He said, do you like flying? I said, yes, sir. He said, you own to fly one? I said, I'd like to. He said, well, go out and get yourself a job. I was 14 years old.
No kidding.
And I said, well...
so you were flying planes when you were a young teenager?
Well, flying model planes when I was a child. That's what my hobby was, flying model planes. So when I flew that, got back, I started doing that. But anyway, it started there. And then took a few flying lessons, got interested in flying, and then came to go in service.
That led to your becoming a pilot in the service.
Yes, sir.
But I'm getting way ahead of things. I want to go back to the beginning and recall that as a young man, you were too young to join the service.
Yes, sir.
But you joined anyway.
I did. I had some friends that helped me, and they, I'm like kids. I dropped out of school. I started my sophomore year and dropped out of school. I was 16. So friends that I had said, you need to get your act together. My father was working at the shipyard. So they had a program that with that little bit of flight experience I had, I could go into service in a V6 program. If I made it, I did it. If I didn't, I flunked out. But anyway, I took that.
I'm taking you back a little further.
Okay.
Because I want our viewers to know that you did what hundreds of thousands of other young men did at that time of the service. You misrepresented your age so that you could join the service.
I told them I was 18. I was only 16.
Okay.
I told them I'd finished high school, which I did not. I was a high school dropout.
Yeah.
But
and we can smile about that because hundreds of thousands of other young men during that era did the very same thing.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Well, that's what you did back then. When you quit school, you go in service. That's automatic. If you quit school back in the 40s when World War II was going on, and all of them didn't lie about that. Some of them were old enough, but I kind of lied about my age and lied about my education. But I did get into a V6 program, and I did go to flight school, and I did become they called us aviators back then. And I got to fly in the right seat of an aircraft called the PBY. It was a search and recovery aircraft. And that's what I did while I was in the military.
Yeah. So your early interest in flying as a young man allowed you to have an interest and become a pilot during the war.
Well, yes, I got real bitter that my mother died when I was real young, as I told you, when I was 15. And then my dad was working at the shipyard, and you don't leave a 15-year-old kid at home. And then I liked the military. I was in the National Guards at that time, and I liked the service, and I wanted to go in. And why I chose the Navy over the Army, I don't know, but I had two brothers who were ahead of me in the Army.
Okay.
And they were both in service overseas at that time.
Right.
And I wanted to be like them.
Well, let's talk about life in the service. You finished flight school.
Yes, sir.
And am I correct in thinking that you were assigned to the Pacific Theater?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a minute. Where were you?
A place called Barbers Point Naval Air Station on Oahu in Hawaii.
Yeah.
We were in a squadron, a PBY, Search and Recovery. SAR. Search and Recovery.
And so our viewers will understand, you and your fellow pilots engaged in the business of searching and recovering airmen or others?
Anyone we called out to.
Civilians as well?
Well, we didn't have, well, we did. We had a few contacts for civilians. People were on fishing boats or things like that.
Sure.
They got in trouble. We helped.
Yeah.
Because that was what you did back then. The main purpose for ours was search and recovery. The pilots who didn't make it back or had a problem, had to ditch in the water, or people who had problems at just any kind of problem at sea, that's what we were supposed to do, search and recovery.
You flew at a relatively low altitude,
yes,
so
sir.
as to perform your work.
Yes, sir. The maximum altitude was about 12 to 13,000. Our airspeed was about 160 was tops, but normally we flew at about 120, 113 to 120 knots. And we would fly anywhere from 2,000 feet above, or if we knew someone was in such an area, we'd get down to 400 feet.
All right, and because I don't know the answer to this question, I'll ask it. Were you, did you actually have a lot of search and rescue missions, or did you spend most of your time just out waiting or looking?
Looking.
Okay.
We had some, and as I said, we didn't fly 8 or 10 hours a day. You might have a 4-hour mission. Depends on where you had it chartered to go. You went there and you returned. We did some night flying. We did some daylight flying. When we were called, we went, regardless what time or where or when we went. Now,
this question is a little different, but Hawaii was a main center for our naval ships.
Yes, Sixth Fleet.
So there was the Sixth Fleet, right?
Yes, sir.
So there was a lot going on, I take it, in your area.
Yes, sir. And we had a submarine base there, as you know, in Pearl Harbor. And we've had some calls for they had problems and they had to submerge, and we had to assist them, but not a mechanical problem. And we were the nearest people, so we were the nearest one that did what we had to do.
Right.
We did it back then. I understand now Barber's Point Naval Air Station is now closed, I understand.
Okay.
It was a very popular place. Hickam Field was the Army Air Corps. Naval Barber's Point was the Navy. And then, you know, Pearl Harbor was most of the shipping and submarine corps.
I want to change subjects on you a little bit and talk about what life was like here in the States. Because during your early years, your teenage years, you were here while the war was going on before you joined the service. So what was it like? What was...
Well, when the war started, everything became rationed.
Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Everything was rationed. You had a little book of stamps, like yellow stamps they called them. You'd use those to buy canned foods, meat, anything. Gas was rationed back then. It was really expensive, 11 cents a gallon. And everything was rationed. Now, something I remember, but I have a problem with the colors, but it's been over 70 years ago. We had little flags we put on windows for the people in service. Like I had 2 brothers ahead of me. There was 2 flags, a star in each one of those little flags.
Okay.
When I went in, my dad hung, my mother had passed away by then. And then I went in service.
So your dad had 3 stars?
There's 3 sons in service at the same time.
And were they on the front of the home?
On the front of your house, in your window. Most people had a front window, you know.
So if I came by, I could know that this particular family had 2 sons.
3 sons in the service at the same time.
3
military. It could be our daughter if you had a daughter, which we did not have. We had sons.
Right.
There were 3 sons. But that was something that everybody respected each other back then. And the rationing part was kind of rough because we never went hungry, but we didn't have a lot of waste food back then.
Well, that's where I was going. If you didn't go hungry, you and the rest of America deprived themselves of a lot of luxuries in order to promote the war effort.
Yes, sir. Now, most people had what they call a victory garden back then.
Right.
You'd plant potatoes, you'd plant a few hills of corn, you'd plant things like that. And when my mother was alive, she would can those things during the summer. So we had plenty of food during the winter. We had food. But we were blessed. We did have a garden. A lot of people in the city did not have a garden. They depended on those, I don't want to use the word food stamps. They depended on the stamps they got so they could buy food.
I understand. Yeah.
Now that was very, very far back then. And some things you could not get unless you had the stamp was gas. Gas was a commodity that was very rationed. And I used to negotiate a little deal, getting some gas and getting rid of it, but we won't go into that. But
We talked about food. What about cigarettes?
They
Things
were
like
rationed very much. That was something that was very much rationed out. And naturally, there was a demand. This is North Carolina. Back then, I think about 99% of people smoked.
Yeah.
In fact, back then, Jim, they used to come to school and tell us kids, they would give us a cigarette to try in school. This was in the 40s, okay?
No kidding.
And they'd have Lucky Strikes or Chesterfield or Camel. Those, and I forgot who it was, Leggett Myers or ever who the company was selling cigarettes. I don't remember. But anyway, for kids to try it. And I was advised never to smoke a cigarette, which I never did and never have.
How about that? Well, I can recall reading or being told that back in that era there were TV commercials applauding the virtues of cigarette smoking.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something we know altogether differently
yes,
now.
sir. Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, let me tell you something about cigarettes in the service.
Yeah.
When I was in service, they were 49 cents a carton.
Wow.
And there's 10 packets to a carton, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
And I would allow 2 cartons of pay period, okay? I would get 2 cartons, and I would sell them to my people in my squadron.
The smokers.
For 50 cents a carton. I made a penny. I made entrepreneur. I made a penny a carton, but I just bought it for those guys. They just give me 50 cents. But that was something in service,
How about that? I want to talk about something a little personal to you, but I think it's characteristic of so many of our veterans. They're quiet heroes, and they don't talk about their experiences sometimes for many, many years. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I think that was true of a lot of our veterans.
Yes, sir.
And I think the same thing is true of a lot of your World War II veterans. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Jim, this is the first time I've sat down as one-on-one to discuss it with you because you are a personal friend. But I've spoke with you more in the last few minutes than I've ever spoken to my children. I will talk to another veteran, but I don't talk to, I just don't make it a practice. They asked me a few months ago as a VFW member to go and speak to some kids at a school. Well, there was 4 or 5 of us went, and we spoke a little, but we didn't get into detail. Just told them we were in service,
Sure.
where we were stationed, and that.
Well, I think it speaks so well for you, but for all of our veterans. Even here in Brunswick County, we have
Yes, sir.
we have quite a few veterans, and they're not a loud or boisterous group, but they have a very quiet and significant presence here in our community.
Yes, sir.
And that speaks well for all of our veterans. Norman Meares, you're an humble but true American hero, and we appreciate your being with us today.
Jim, it's been an honor. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you for your service.
Thanks.
Thank you. I got to ride in a parade. You did not get the same welcome when you came home from Vietnam. I remember that very well.
That's okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you.